I am Hank Harper, 38 years old, a bridge construction engineer who spent the last 4 years working all over Germany. Right now, I'm behind the wheel of a rental car fresh from the airport flying down the highway toward Ohio. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. No calls, no messages. Why? Because I wanted it to be a surprise. Because I was afraid that if I said it out loud, the longing would break me before I even made it home. For 4 years, I lived like a machine, building massive bridges across the Rhine, but in my mind, there was only one bridge that mattered. The one that would finally carry me back to Aubrey. My daughter, my own flesh and blood. Aubrey Harper. Just thinking her name makes my heart pound. 4 years apart. She's 10 now. The last time I saw her, she was barely 6, those huge round eyes brimming with tears. Clinging to my legs as if letting go would make me disappear forever. That memory is still razor sharp, painful as the day it happened. I remember it perfectly. Cleveland Airport. Aubrey sobbing, her little voice breaking with every hiccup, desperate and raw, like her tiny heart was shattering. "Daddy, please don't leave me. I want to come with you." She clutched my pant legs, tears soaking her chubby cheeks. I had to turn away and walk, each step heavier than the last, fighting the urge to spin around and scoop her up one more time. If I had, I might never have boarded that plane. It was the hardest choice I ever made, but I told myself it was for the future. A better job, better pay, so one day I could give her a life without want. Now after 4 long years, I'm back. The plane landed at midnight. I rented a car and drove straight to Ohio. The familiar roads feel strange tonight. Why is the wind so cold? Trees whip past the windows like ghosts racing through my memories. In my head, Aubrey is crystal clear. How tall is she now? Does she still love chocolate ice cream? Does she even remember me? I smile to myself, but the smile fades fast when I think of those rare video calls. Mom always put it off. She's asleep. She's doing homework. The photos she sent were blurry. Aubrey's smile looked forced. I told myself it was bad internet, that she was just camera shy. But deep down, a faint unease had started to grow. It's fine. I'm here now. I'll hug her tight and make up for everything. The car stops in front of my parents' old house on the outskirts of town, and it's late, but I can't wait until morning. My heart is hammering as I kill the engine and step out. The air feels unnaturally cold, wrapped in a thick, eerie fog. The house is swallowed in darkness. No lights anywhere. Strange. My parents always stayed up late watching TV, and Aubrey would definitely still be awake. Are they away? No, I didn't tell anyone I was coming, but someone should be home. A chill wind rattles the leaves, the hair on my arm stands up. I walk to the door and call softly. "Mom, Dad, Aubrey, I'm home. Is anyone there?" No answer. I ring the doorbell over and over. The chime echoes into the night, but the house stays silent. A suffocating dread rises in my throat. Something's wrong. I dig through my pocket for the spare key, the one I've carried like a talisman all these years. Hands trembling, I slide it in, turn it. The door creaks open and I step inside. It's pitch black and freezing, like walking into a tomb. The air is heavy, stale, thick with mildew. No signs of life, no TV, no smell of food, no faint glow from the kitchen. I call louder. My voice bounces off the empty hallway, answered only by its own echo. I flip on the lights and scan the living room. The old sofa, the dining table covered in dust. No one. Lawson, Cassidy, Aubrey, where are they? I rush to Aubrey's room, praying she's asleep. The bed is empty, sheets cold, panic claws at my chest. Where did everyone go? Why is the house this terrifyingly vacant? I turn to head outside and ask the neighbors. Then, in the dead silence, a faint sound drifts from the back of the house. A weak, broken sob, muffled as if someone is trying to stifle unbearable pain. My heart seizes. What was that? An animal? Or a person? I freeze and listen. It comes again, clearer now. A choked, desperate whimper coming from the direction of the old basement. Terror explodes inside me, blood roaring in my ears. I spin around and move toward the back of the house, each step heavy, gripping my phone like a weapon. Every footfall matches the frantic pounding of my heart. What's waiting down there? Why does that sobbing sound so full of agony? I moved deeper into the back of the house, past the pitch-black hallway that led to the kitchen. The sobbing grew clearer, no longer vague. Now it was ragged, labored breathing, broken and faint in the darkness, as if someone were fighting to draw air through unbearable pain. Each gasp stabbed my heart like a knife. Cold sweat broke out down my spine. I paused for a second, trying to steady myself. "Calm down, Hank. It's probably just a rat or something," I told myself, but my gut screamed otherwise. The sound was coming from the old storage basement at the rear of the house, a place almost no one ever used anymore. That basement, damp, cluttered with junk, where Dad kept garden tools and random odds and ends. I pushed open the kitchen door. The flashlight from my phone swept across dusty cabinets and the untouched dining table. The crying echoed clearly now, distorted through the wooden floorboards. My heart pounded so hard my ears rang. I reached the basement hatch, a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. My trembling hands yanked the rug aside, revealing the rusted iron cover. "Who's there? Who's down there?" I called softly, my voice cracking with fear. No answer, only faster, weaker breathing. I swallowed hard, lifted the hatch and started down the narrow stairs. Each step groaned beneath my weight like a wail in the darkness. The air below was freezing and reeking of mold. I coughed as it hit my lungs. The phone's beam cut through the gloom. Every step downward dragged me closer to the terror churning in my chest. I prayed it was an illusion, but the sobs grew nearer, more real. The moment I shoved open the heavy basement door, wood screeching on rusty hinges, my whole body froze, as if turned to ice. The sight that hit me was so horrific I nearly screamed. Aubrey, my daughter, was curled up on the cold concrete floor, her ankle chained to a rusted iron post. The thick, crude chain was padlocked around her thin leg. The skin beneath was raw, swollen, and bleeding in places. Next to her lay only a few moldy scraps of food, crumbled crackers, hardened bread crusts, and a couple of nearly empty plastic water bottles. She lay there in the damp darkness, her tiny body huddled into a ball as if trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth. No, this can't be real. My heart stopped. My mind reeled. Aubrey, my little girl, the child I loved more than life, was locked up like an animal. A scream rose in my throat, but nothing came out, only ragged, desperate breaths that mixed with her faint sobs in the sealed tomb of a room. Tears poured down my face. Where were my parents? How could they let this happen? I lunged forward, stumbling over the rough floor, not caring about the pain. I threw myself at her and wrapped her in my arms. Her body was nothing but skin and bone, so light, so fragile. Her skin was ice cold. Ribs jutted out beneath a torn, threadbare shirt. Bruises, old and new, covered her. Welts from belts, handprints, marks I couldn't even name. Aubrey's breathing was shallow, barely there, her chest rising in tiny, labored movements. Her eyes fluttered open, wide with terror, then fixed on me as if she couldn't believe I was real. "Daddy, you came back? You came to get me?" she whispered, voice as faint as a breeze. I clutched her to me, arms shaking, holding her so tightly I was afraid I'd hurt her, yet terrified to let go. The fear of losing her crashed over me like a tidal wave. She was teetering on the edge of death, breath fading, skin pale, eyes glassy with exhaustion. "I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. You're going to be okay, don't be scared," I choked out, tears falling onto her tangled hair. Memories flooded back, 6-year-old Aubrey laughing as I spun her around in the backyard. Now she lay here chained like a prisoner in this hellhole. Who did this? My parents? It was impossible. But the proof was right in front of me, ripping my heart apart. I forced myself to breathe, to swallow the rage boiling inside. Not now. Save her first. Fear didn't paralyze me. I couldn't let it. She needed out, now. Hospital, warmth, life. Letting go of her felt like tearing off a limb, but I had to. "I'm getting you out, Aubrey. Hold on, sweetheart," I said, voice trembling. I frantically searched for anything to break the chain, a hammer, a crowbar, anything. The phone light swept wildly. Old junk, a rusty toolbox, a wrench. I grabbed the wrench and hammered the padlock with everything I had. Metal clanged against metal, echoing in the tomb-like room, but the lock held. Every second felt like a knife to the heart. Aubrey was fading, her breathing slowing. I hit harder, sweat mixing with tears, hands bleeding from the impacts. While I hammered, I kept talking, desperate to keep her conscious. Aubrey, look at Daddy. Remember the fairy tales I used to tell you? Little Red Riding Hood, your favorite. Tell me again, how did she beat the wolf? I babbled anything to keep her with me, terrified that if she slipped away once more, she'd never come back. She whispered something, eyes half open, barely audible. Daddy, the chain hurts. Her words cut deeper than any blade. I swung harder, pouring every ounce of strength into it. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the lock snapped with a sharp metallic crack. My legs nearly gave out from exhaustion, but I couldn't collapse. Not now. I scooped Aubrey into my arms. She weighed almost nothing, like a dried leaf. I bolted up the endless stairs, through the kitchen, down the hallway, out the front door. Pure panic drove me. I didn't dare waste a single second. Aubrey, listen to Daddy. Stay with me. I'm taking you to the hospital, I whispered, carrying her to the car. I laid her gently on the back seat and wrapped her in an old blanket from the trunk. The car tore into the night, tires screaming on the asphalt. I drove like a madman, praying to God, to Emily, to anyone who would listen, that my little girl still had enough life left to reach the hospital. Streetlights streaked past the windows. My heart felt ready to explode. Don't leave me alone, Aubrey. Please, baby. Hold on, I muttered, tears blurring the road. The way to the hospital stretched on forever, every second a battle for her life. The road to the hospital felt endless. Every second was a battle. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror. Aubrey lay motionless on the back seat, her breathing so faint, her skin ghostly pale under the dim streetlights. I reached back and grabbed her hand. It was ice cold. Her pulse was a fragile thread beneath my fingers. Every red light was torture. I leaned on the horn, begging the road to clear. Terror roared inside me. If she didn't make it, I would never forgive myself. 4 years away, and I come home to find my child in hell. Who did this? My parents. The question clawed at me, but I shoved it down. Save her first. Finally, the hospital lights appeared ahead, blazing like a lighthouse in the blackness. I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded across the lot, tires screeching. I scooped Aubrey into my arms. She weighed almost nothing, like a dried leaf, and ran toward the emergency entrance in blind panic. The automatic doors slid open. Hospital smells hit me. Disinfectant, beeping machines, exhausted faces. Save my daughter. Please save my little girl. I screamed, voice raw with fear and exhaustion, as her tiny body went completely limp in my arms. Aubrey was unresponsive, eyes closed, breathing barely there. Nurses rushed over with a gurney and lifted her onto it. What happened to her? One asked, calm but urgent. My daughter was locked up, starved, chained. Please save her. I was shaking, tears streaming uncontrollably. They wheeled her into the trauma room. The doors slammed shut in my face. The lock clicked like a verdict. I stood frozen, staring at those white doors as if they were a wall between me and my child's life. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto a waiting room chair, hands trembling over my head. My mind was chaos, flashes of the basement, the chain, the bruises, her broken sobs. How could this happen? My parents, the people I trusted most. How could they? I remembered the day I left Aubrey with them. Mom had hugged her tight and smiled. Don't worry, son. We'll take good care of her. Those words now cut like glass. Minutes dragged like hours. The wall clock ticked slowly, torturing me. I paced, fists clenched, praying silently. Emily, if you're up there, please protect her. Tears fell again. I wiped them away, trying to stay strong. The hospital buzzed around me, crying children shouted names, but for me the world was only that door. Eventually the doctor came out, middle-aged, graying hair, glasses, cold, searching eyes. My heart leapt into my throat. How is my daughter? Is she okay? I rushed toward him, voice shaking. He paused, looked me up and down, and said flatly, "Her condition has been stabilized for now. We're monitoring her." Then he turned and walked away. No further explanation. I stood stunned. Stabilized? That's all? No details about her injuries, her state? Why did he look at me like I was the criminal? That detached attitude sent ice through my veins. "Wait, doctor! What's wrong with my daughter?" I shouted after him, but he disappeared around the corner. Just as I stood to chase him, 2 police officers appeared at the end of the hallway, striding quickly toward me. Uniforms, stern faces, hands resting on their belts. "Are you Hank Harper?" one asked, voice flat. I nodded. Before I could speak, they grabbed me, one pinning my arms, the other slamming me against the wall. "Mr. Harper, you are being detained." I was stunned, furious, helpless. "What? Let me go. My daughter is in there fighting for her life." I struggled, but they held firm. Handcuffs clicked coldly around my wrists. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spun. I had just saved her, now I was being arrested? One officer recited in a monotone, "We received a report that you are the person who abused and neglected the child. The little girl you brought in shows signs of severe, prolonged abuse." The words hit like lightning. Abuse? Me? I stared at them, mouth open. "No, you've got it wrong. That's my daughter, Aubrey. I just rescued her from the basement." They didn't listen, skepticism written all over their faces. At that moment, the same doctor returned, standing beside the officers with an even colder expression. It clicked. He was the one who called the police. That first suspicious stare, the icy demeanor. "You reported me, didn't you?" I growled. He nodded without emotion. "Based on the child's injuries, we are required by law to report suspected abuse." I fought desperately, insisting Aubrey was my biological daughter, that I'd just flown in from overseas, that I could never have done this. "I've been in Germany for 4 years. I landed tonight. Please listen to me." I begged, tears spilling over. But none of them believed me. Their faces stayed hard. All the evidence pointed against me. A strange man bringing in a gravely injured child in the middle of the night. No paperwork, no clear story. I looked exactly like the abuser, clothes disheveled, hands bloodied from breaking the chain, face pale with panic. In desperation, I demanded they search my bag for proof. "My bag's in the car. Passport, plane ticket, check it," I shouted. One officer glanced at his partner, nodded, and went to my car in the parking lot. He came back with the exact bag I described, dusty from the long trip. They searched it right there in front of me and the doctor. U.S. passport with German work visa stamps, boarding pass from Berlin to Cleveland dated today. Employment contract with the German construction company, 4-year overseas work papers. Everything proving I had just arrived and could not possibly have inflicted years of abuse. Only then did the doubt in their eyes begin to fade. The officer removed the handcuffs and said, softer now, "We're sorry, Mr. Harper. We have to follow procedure." The doctor stepped forward, gave a slight bow, and added, "I apologize for the misunderstanding. But the child's injuries indicate prolonged abuse, not recent. We are legally obligated to report it." I was released from restraint, but still required to stay for questioning. My legs buckled. I sank back into the chair, hands shaking. The officers took my full statement, my return, discovering the basement, rescuing Aubrey, and my suspicions about my own parents. I told them everything, voice breaking with emotion while they wrote it all down. They also received the detailed medical report, old and new bruises, signs of malnutrition, chain marks on her ankle. The police informed me they would investigate the house and locate my parents. "We'll search the property and find them. If anything else comes up, contact us immediately." After the initial paperwork, the 2 officers left, leaving me slumped on the hallway bench, shattered, stunned, and haunted. I buried my face in my hands, tears falling freely. I had just pulled my daughter out of hell only to be treated like the monster. How cruel could life be? Memories of Emily flooded back. She would be heartbroken if she saw this. I stared at the trauma room doors, praying Aubrey would wake up. That night stretched on forever, every second layered with fresh pain. But I knew the fight had only just begun. After the police left, the hospital corridor grew quieter, but inside my head everything was chaos. The distant beeping of machines, the sharp smell of disinfectant that made me nauseous. I sat there, my body drained after a sleepless night, yet I didn't dare close my eyes. Every time I did, the dark basement, the iron chain, and Aubrey's skeletal little body flashed before me, vivid as knife cuts. I kept asking myself where I had gone wrong. How had life thrown me into this nightmare? My parents, the people I once saw as my strongest foundation, were now suspects in my mind. I shook my head, trying to drive the thought away, but it clung like a shadow. A little later, the same doctor returned. He stopped in front of me. His face was softer now, no longer that cold, probing stare. "Mr. Harper, once again, I'm truly sorry for the initial misunderstanding," he said, voice low and warm, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "We have to be extremely careful in cases like this, especially with children. Aubrey's condition is more stable now. You can visit her in the ICU for a short while." That apology felt like cool water, easing some of the burning resentment inside me. I nodded, stood up on shaky legs, and whispered a hoarse, "Thank you." He led me down the hall and opened the ICU door. A brightly lit room full of monitors, the air heavy and still. I stepped inside and my heart stopped. There was Aubrey, lost in drug-induced sleep on the white hospital bed, IV lines running into her tiny arm. Her face was still deathly pale, cheeks sunken, but her breathing was steadier now, her chest rising and falling gently under the thin blanket. The heart monitor beeped in a steady rhythm, a fragile reassurance. That temporary stability brought both relief and agony. Relief that she was alive and breathing, agony at the bruises still visible on her arms and neck, cruel reminders of the hell she had endured. I walked to her bedside, legs heavy as if wading through mud. "Baby," I whispered, voice breaking. I sat down and took her small hand in mine. It was soft but ice cold, so thin, so frail, not the chubby little hand I used to hold while we walked in the park. Tears fell again, dripping onto her skin. "I'm so sorry, Aubrey. Daddy came back too late," I whispered, squeezing gently, terrified that if I let go she would slip away forever. The ICU was silent except for the machines and her faint breathing. I sat there watching her sleep, and old memories flooded back like a slow-motion film, dragging me into the past. I remembered the night Emily died, right after a difficult birth. It was pouring rain at Cleveland Hospital. The rain hammered the windows while newborn Aubrey wailed in the delivery room. Emily lay there pale as death, machines beeping their final warning. The doctor shook his head. "I'm sorry, we couldn't save her." My world shattered. I fell to my knees beside her bed, clutching her cold hand. She left me alone with Aubrey, a red, crying infant wrapped in a white blanket. From that day on, I was a single father. I brought her home, learned to mix formula, change diapers, rock her to sleep in the middle of the night. In those early days, I cried alone, staring at her and aching for Emily. "Emily, what do I do now?" I whispered to our wedding photo on the table. I worked construction by day, covered in dust, deafened by machinery, then came home to hold my daughter, telling her fairy tales until she fell asleep. Some nights I stayed up with a feverish baby, pacing the room, singing hoarse lullabies soaked in sweat. Mornings rushing her to school in the rain, holding the umbrella over her while I got drenched, smiling. "Be good today, okay? Daddy will bring ice cream when I get home." Life was hard, money tight, time short, but it was filled with love. Aubrey grew up in my arms, lighting up whenever I walked through the door, running to hug me. "Yay, Daddy's home!" Those moments were treasures, the reason I kept going after losing Emily. Then the job in Germany came, a huge bridge project in Berlin, triple the pay. I agonized for weeks, lying awake, staring at Aubrey asleep beside me, heart twisting. How could I leave her? She needed her dad every day. But the promise of a better future, no more scraping by, forced me to say yes. "Daddy's only going for 4 years, sweetheart. I'll come back and we'll be happy," I whispered the night before I left. I left Aubrey with my parents, uneasy but telling myself they were her grandparents. No one would love her more. Dad clapped my shoulder. Don't worry, son. We'll take care of her like our own. Mom hugged Aubrey tight. You'll stay with Grandma and Grandpa. We'll make sure you have everything. I believed them. They were family. I had no other choice. In Berlin, I thought of her every single day. In my cold little apartment, I'd look at photos of Aubrey on my phone and smile to myself. Every month, I sent money home, every euro I could save, hoping it bought her good meals, new books, warm clothes. She's growing up so fast, isn't she? I'd ask myself. Those rare calls were my lifeline. But now, sitting beside her hospital bed, holding her frail hand, I realized I had never once heard Aubrey herself say she was happy. Everything came through my parents. Aubrey's doing great, don't worry, Mom would say, voice bright but somehow forced. Every time I asked to video call Aubrey, Cassidy found an excuse. She's asleep, she's studying, she's tired. Let's do it tomorrow, she's not feeling well today. I believed her because I was busy, because I was far away. The photos Cassidy sent were always oddly similar. Same old living room angle, Aubrey standing stiffly, smile forced, as if taken only to check a box. I thought Grandma just wasn't good with cameras. Now I see the fear in that smile. I also remembered how Aubrey's voice on those rare calls grew quieter, more timid, frightened. Nothing like the bright, chatty girl I left behind. Are you okay, Aubrey? I'd ask. Yes, I'm fine, Daddy. Don't worry too much, she'd whisper, voice trembling, then fall silent. How had I not seen it sooner? A chill ran down my spine as the pieces finally clicked into place. All the delays, the fake smiles, the fearful whispers over 4 long years. A horrifying picture was forming. The next morning, while Aubrey was still unconscious, I stepped into the hallway and called my mother. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice calm, pretending nothing had happened. I didn't say I was back in the country, just asked where they were and how Aubrey was doing. The phone rang a few times, then Mom's cheerful voice. Hank, it's me. We're at home. Aubrey's still sleeping. Everything's perfectly normal, same as always. She even laughed lightly as if nothing were wrong. I swallowed hard and asked, Is she doing okay, Mom? Eating well? Oh, she's great. Eats everything, sleeps like a log. Just focus on your work. We're taking good care of her. Like always, they asked about my health, told me not to worry, insisted they were looking after Aubrey perfectly. Your dad says hi. He's watching TV with her right now, Mom added, voice warm and utterly fake. I went numb, realizing those same lies were still flowing while my daughter lay unconscious in the ICU because of their cruelty. Rage boiled inside me, but I forced it down. Okay, talk soon, Mom, I said shortly and hung up, my hand shaking so hard my nails dug into my palm. In that moment, I made the decision. I would keep everything secret. I would not let them know I had uncovered the truth. I couldn't give them a chance to run. I would wait silently for them to come home and walk straight into the trap. I would gather evidence and expose their crimes in the light of justice. No escape. The pain was still there, but now it had hardened into cold determination. I walked back into the room, looked at Aubrey and whispered, Daddy will get justice for you. The real fight was just beginning, and I would not stop. I sat by Aubrey's bed a little longer, holding her hand tightly, feeling her steadier breathing as a reminder that I had to act. She was still unconscious, but the doctors said her physical condition was improving, at least on the surface. The invisible wounds, the ones carved into her mind and soul, would take far longer to heal. I stood up, wiped my tears, and forced a calm expression as I called the nurse. Please keep watching her closely and take good care of her for me, I said, voice low but firm. The nurse nodded, eyes full of sympathy. We'll do everything we can, Mr. Harper. Where are you going? I shook my head. I wasn't ready to tell anyone. I have some things to take care of. Call me the moment she wakes up. I left my number and quietly walked out of the hospital, my chest heavy as if I were carrying a boulder. Outside, the Ohio morning was cool and crisp, weak sunlight filtering through the trees, but to me the world was still as dark as the night before. I drove back to my parents' house in the suburbs. The familiar road now felt alien, haunted. Every turn brought memories. Childhood days running in the yard, Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Mom baking apple pies that filled the house with warmth. Now it was all just a cruel facade. I parked at the gate, hands gripping the wheel, taking deep breaths to steady myself. I brought my phone to record everything that remained, evidence, solid evidence. I couldn't let emotion take over, no matter how much my blood was boiling. I stepped inside, the door still unlocked from last night, the same cold, lifeless air. I went straight to the back toward the basement, Aubrey's hell. My heart pounded as I pushed open the kitchen door. The damp, moldy smell hit me and made me cough. I turned on my phone's flashlight and descended the narrow stairs, one heavy step at a time, walking back into the nightmare. I re-entered the basement, filming every detail. The chain, the broken padlock, the cold concrete floor where Aubrey had lain, every corner preserved as evidence. I paused at the door, hand shaking as I pushed it open. The weak light revealed it all again. The icy floor stained with dried blood where the chain had bitten into her skin. The rusted chain lying discarded, the shattered lock from my desperate blows the night before. I knelt, fingers brushing the concrete, feeling my daughter's pain as if it were my own. "How long were you down here?" I whispered, tears rolling down my face. I turned on the camera and recorded everything. The chain scarred from her struggles, the mangled lock, the floor littered with crumbs of moldy food and stagnant water. I filmed the exact spot where she had curled up, the damp corner where she must have cried silently night after night. Every dark nook, every dusty box, everything became evidence. Each second of recording was another knife in my heart, but I didn't stop. The courts had to see this hell. When I finished in the basement, I climbed back up, exhausted but burning with resolve. I went into my parents' bedroom and gently pushed the door open, half expecting ghosts. The room was dark, reeking of cheap perfume mixed with dust. I turned on the light and froze. Scattered across the table were luxury shopping receipts, Gucci bags, Prada shoes, a Rolex watch, all dated right after my money transfers. I picked them up with trembling hands. One receipt from the 15th of last month, the day after I sent $2,000. Another for an expensive leather jacket, the exact day I wired Aubrey's birthday money. There were also travel brochures, flights to Florida, luxury hotels in Las Vegas, and bank loan papers with huge amounts and sky-high interest. None of the money had gone to Aubrey. No books, no clothes, no proper meals. It had been spent on gambling debts, shopping sprees, and vacations while my daughter was chained in the basement with stale bread. I sat down hard on the bed, head in my hands, tears spilling. Every dollar I had saved on German construction sites, 12-hour shifts in the rain, living on sandwiches to send more home, had bought them luxury while Aubrey suffered. "How could you?" I whispered, voice breaking. But I refused to let emotion win. I photographed every receipt, every document, clear, sharp images under the flash. My bank statements would match these dates perfectly, proving the money came from me. When I was done, I left the house, rage fueling me. I decided to talk to the neighbors. This quiet suburb of identical white wooden houses now felt like a street of silent witnesses. I knocked on Mrs. Jenkins' door next door, the old woman who always sat on her porch watching the world. She opened it, squinting. "Hank, you're back?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, ma'am. Do you know where my parents went?" She confirmed she had seen them leave with large suitcases days ago. Off to Florida or somewhere, laughing and happy. Other neighbors said the same. Mr. Smith across the street saw them take a taxi to the airport. Mrs. Lee overheard them talking about a fancy hotel. But then the stories turned horrifying. Several neighbors admitted they had often heard shouting, Lawson yelling, a child crying, Mr. Smith said, voice full of regret. Mrs. Jenkins had even seen Lawson hit Aubrey once through the fence. He slapped her hard for spilling water or something. The poor girl screamed, but Cassidy just stood there watching. They said Aubrey was almost never allowed outside except to go to school, always tightly controlled. No friends, no playing in the yard, always walking with her head down. She looked terrified, Hank. We were worried, but we didn't want to interfere. Mrs. Lee sighed. Their words cut like blades. I stood there, fists clenched, fighting tears. How had I not seen? I thanked them, recorded the conversations as evidence, then drove to Aubrey's elementary school. The familiar playground now filled with laughing children. I met her homeroom teacher, Miss Miller, in her office. She recognized me instantly. "Mr. Harper? Aubrey talked about you all the time." I asked about my daughter. She confirmed Aubrey often came to class exhausted, eyes ringed with dark circles, jumpy and withdrawn, grades slipping. Whenever anyone asked what was wrong, Aubrey went silent. She'd just shake her head and say, "I'm fine." We were concerned, but she never told us anything. Faced with this mountain of evidence and testimony, I stood speechless, pain and rage twisting so tightly I could barely breathe. On the drive back to the hospital, I suddenly slammed on the brakes, pulled over, and punched the steering wheel over and over in a surge of pent-up despair. Regret for trusting the wrong people. How could I have been so blind? And trembling fury that my daughter had suffered in silence all these years. Aubrey, how strong she must have been, enduring alone so I wouldn't worry. I cried. For her, for myself, for the trust that had been destroyed. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and steeled myself. I had to be strong. The evidence was gathered. Now I would wait for them to come home. The confrontation was coming, and I would show no mercy. I parked the car and walked into the hospital with heavy steps, carrying a bag of light food I'd picked up on the way. Nutritious porridge, fruit juice, things she used to love. The nurse met me in the hallway and smiled reassuringly. "Aubrey's awake, Mr. Hank. She's been asking for her dad." My heart leapt. I rushed into the room, forgetting even to say hello. I stayed at the hospital day and night, personally feeding her every sip of water, every spoonful of porridge, never leaving her side. She lay there, eyes wide when she saw me, but still so weak, skin pale under the fluorescent lights. I sat on the edge of the bed, stirred the chicken porridge gently, and said softly, "Eat a little, sweetheart. Daddy got your favorite chicken porridge." Aubrey gave a faint smile, but tears rolled down her cheeks. I wiped them away, my hands trembling. Those days I didn't go home. I slept on the waiting room chair, waking the instant a nurse called. I fed her, told her silly stories to make her smile, changed her bandages, stroked her hair. Every moment beside her was a reminder. I had missed too much. Now I had to make up for it tenfold. The doctors checked daily and said she was recovering well physically, but I knew the wounds in her heart would take the longest to heal. When Aubrey finally became fully conscious, her eyes filled with tears the moment she saw me clearly. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Daddy, you really came back." That first lucid moment after the coma, her eyes wide and shining with tears, voice barely audible, broke me. My heart felt crushed. I threw myself forward and wrapped her in my arms, sobbing as if my chest were tearing apart. Her frail body felt like bones in my embrace, ribs sticking out, but that faint warmth was everything. "Daddy's here, baby. I'm home. I'm never leaving again," I whispered, tears falling onto her shoulder. I kept apologizing, blaming myself for letting her suffer alone. "I'm so sorry, Aubrey. I should have come back sooner. I didn't know. I didn't know you were going through this." She cried with me, her tiny hands clutching my shirt as if I might vanish. We held each other and sobbed in the quiet hospital room, pouring out years of pain. 2 days later, Aubrey's condition improved noticeably. She could sit up against the pillows and speak slowly, though she was still very weak. Color returned to her cheeks, her eyes brighter, but she tired quickly and had to pause mid-sentence. I sat beside her, holding her hand, telling old stories to make her smile. "Remember when we went to the park and you begged for ice cream?" She gave a small laugh, voice soft. "I remember, Daddy. I got it all over your pants that day." Those moments were priceless, but I knew we had to face the truth. I knew reopening the memories would be cruel, but I had to understand everything to protect her completely. I hesitated for a long time, heart twisting as I looked at her. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. But if you don't want to talk about it, we won't." She nodded, a flash of fear in her eyes. When I mentioned the years living with Grandma and Grandpa, Aubrey suddenly started shaking and burst into heartbreaking sobs. curling into a ball under the blanket, shoulders trembling. My heart shattered. I rushed to comfort her, waiting until she calmed, holding her hand tightly. "It's okay, baby. Don't cry. Daddy's here. Nothing can hurt you now. Tell me. I'll protect you." I rubbed her back and whispered soothing words like I did on nights when she had fever as a little girl. It took a while, but she finally calmed, eyes red, voice shaking. "I was so scared, Daddy." Aubrey began to speak, slowly, haltingly, reliving the nightmare. She said the first few weeks after I left, Lawson and Cassidy were still kind. They took her to school, fed her normally, even told bedtime stories like real grandparents. "At first they were nice, Daddy. Grandma made porridge, Grandpa let me watch TV. But gradually things changed. After about a month, they turned cold and irritable, forcing her to do housework from morning till night, sweeping, washing dishes even though she was only 6. Food became scraps, dry bread, leftover vegetables, no meat or fish. I was so hungry, but I didn't dare complain," she whispered, eyes distant. She was beaten for tiny mistakes, spilling water, talking back. Lawson's eyes were no longer those of a grandfather. She described one time in detail. "I broke a glass. Grandpa rushed at me and hit me with his belt. It hurt so much, Daddy. I cried and cried, but he didn't stop. I went numb, gripping the bedsheet until my knuckles turned white." Aubrey choked out that Lawson had beaten her like an enemy, shouting that she wasn't really his granddaughter. "He said, 'You're not my blood, you're just a burden,' and hit me harder." Those words sliced through me. Not his blood? How could he say that? Whenever they went on trips or left the house for days, they locked her in the basement with only moldy crackers and a little water. Once they left me down there for 3 days, it was pitch black and freezing. "I cried for you, Daddy, but no one heard. They threatened that if she ever told anyone, even me, she would be locked away forever and never go to school again. Grandpa said if I told you, he'd kill me. I was so scared. So whenever we talked on the phone, I just said I was fine." In fits of rage, Lawson repeated that she wasn't family, leaving her terrified and filled with self-loathing. "I thought maybe I wasn't really your daughter, that I was bad, so they hated me." She broke down sobbing, body shaking. I died inside with every word. I held her and cried too. "No, baby, that's not true. You are my daughter, my own flesh and blood. I love you more than anything in the world." I couldn't understand how my own parents could be so cruel, or what I had ever done to make my child suffer hell in my place. Why treat their own granddaughter like this? For money? Because they hated me? The question spun unanswered. In that moment, my pain was no longer just a father's grief. It had hardened into a cold, unshakable resolve to bring every person responsible to justice. I wiped her tears, voice steady and fierce. "Daddy will make them pay, Aubrey. No one will ever hurt you again." She nodded, eyes still frightened, but a small peace settled over her as she rested in my arms. I sat by Aubrey a little longer, stroking her hair, telling silly stories to chase the shadows from her eyes. But my mind never stopped racing with plans. The evidence I had collected, photos of the basement, neighbors' statements, shopping receipts, still wasn't enough on its own. I needed to compile everything into an airtight case. Aubrey finally drifted off, her breathing steady under the thin blanket. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Sleep well, my love. Daddy has to take care of something. I'll be back soon." I stood, legs heavy, and left the hospital room with a storm inside me. Outside, night had fallen. Streetlights cast a sickly yellow glow, but to me the world was still as black as that basement. I drove to the cheap motel near the hospital where I had been staying since I got back. I spread all the evidence across the table. Phone photos, recorded neighbor and teacher testimonies, my bank statements showing every regular transfer. I spent the entire night organizing, printing photos, copying audio files to a USB drive, photocopying receipts and statements. I got Aubrey's full medical file from the hospital, detailed reports of bruises, malnutrition, chain marks on her skin. Everything was neatly arranged into a thick folder, a horrifying book of crimes. The next morning, I drove to the local police station, heart pounding. The station sat in the middle of town, a gray building with the American flag snapping in the wind. I walked in and met the officer who had questioned me before. Mike, tall, deep voice. "Mr. Harper, something new?" he asked, eyes searching. I placed the folder on his desk. "This is the evidence. Everything my parents did to my daughter." Mike opened it and flipped through page after page. His brow furrowed at the basement photos. He shook his head at the luxury receipts next to my transfer records. The neighbor and teacher statements, carefully written and backed by recordings, made him pause longest. "This is an extremely serious case, Mr. Harper," he said, voice low. After reviewing everything, the police classified the case as exceptionally grave. Clear signs of child abuse, illegal confinement, and misappropriation of child support funds. Mike called in his captain, Reynolds, middle-aged, beard, sharp eyes. They spoke quickly, then turned to me. "We're opening a formal investigation. This evidence is enough to file charges. Child abuse, unlawful imprisonment, financial exploitation. These are heavy crimes." A small weight lifted from my chest, but the rage still burned. They told me to keep everything completely secret and continue cooperating so my parents wouldn't have time to destroy evidence or flee. "No more calls to them. Don't let on," Captain Reynolds said firmly. "We'll be watching. Do you know when they're coming back?" I shook my head. "From what the neighbors said, in a few days. They're on vacation." We planned the arrest. It would happen the moment they returned home, to catch them red-handed and leave no room for denial. "We'll have people watching the house. When they arrive, you go in first. We'll move in right after," Mike explained. I nodded. It felt like I was in a crime movie, but this was real. My life, Aubrey's life. I left the station, mind spinning, but resolve stronger than ever. I went back to the hospital, sat with Aubrey, told her stories to make her smile, but inside I was counting down the hours. Those waiting days dragged on forever. I stayed with Aubrey constantly, watching her improve little by little, eating more, smiling more, though she still flinched at loud noises. I told her about the bridges I built in Germany, promised to take her places once she was strong again. But at night when she slept, I thought about my parents. Childhood memories flooded back. Dad teaching me to fish by the river, Mom singing lullabies. How had they changed? Or had they always been this way and I just never saw it? The questions tortured me. I barely slept. I called Mike every day for updates. Still no sign of them. Aubrey asked about Grandma and Grandpa. I dodged. "They're away, sweetheart. Right now it's just you and me." Then the day came. Early morning, Mike called. "They're coming back today. We saw a taxi booked from the airport. Get to the house first. We'll be nearby." My heart raced. I kissed Aubrey. "Daddy has to run an errand. I'll be back this afternoon, okay?" She nodded, eyes worried. "Be careful, Daddy. Bring me a present?" I drove to the house, parked a block away, and waited. The police had already briefed me and positioned undercover units around the neighborhood. Unmarked cars, plainclothes officers blending in with neighbors. I went inside, closed the door, and sat in the living room, heart hammering. Every second was agony, sweat beaded on my skin despite the cold. When my parents' taxi pulled up, the familiar yellow cab, the sudden appearance of police cars froze them in place, confusion and fear written on their faces. I watched through the window. Dad Lawson stepped out, tanned from their trip, pulling a suitcase. Mom Cassidy followed, clutching a designer handbag, bought with my money. They glanced around nervously, movements jittery as if they sensed something terribly wrong. They hurried inside, still unsettled, and stopped dead when they saw me standing in the living room. The door had barely closed behind them when the air turned to ice. I stood there, face cold and hard. Beside me were Mike and 3 other officers, one already holding gleaming handcuffs. Mom froze, face draining of color, lips trembling. "Hank? You're back? Why are there police here?" Both of them shook, eyes wild with panic, as if they already knew the inevitable was upon them. Dad backed up. His suitcase hit the floor with a thud. "What the hell is going on?" Mike stepped forward, voice steady. Lawson Harper and Cassidy Harper, you are under arrest for child abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and financial exploitation of a minor. You have the right to remain silent." The words struck like thunder. Dad screamed in panic, thrashing to escape. "No!" "It wasn't us. Hank, what are you doing?" He shoved Mike and tried to bolt for the door, but officers tackled him instantly. Handcuffs clicked shut. Mom collapsed to her knees, wailing and begging. I walked up to them, eyes burning with cold fury, and demanded to know why they could be so cruel to my daughter. "Why? Aubrey is your own granddaughter. How could you chain her, beat her, spend the money I sent on vacations while she starved in the basement?" My voice shook with rage, fists clenched. Lawson let out a mad, manic laugh, eyes blazing, spitting as he spoke. "You think she's my granddaughter? She's not. She's no blood of mine. I've hated you since you were a kid, you little bastard." He laughed like a lunatic even while cuffed. Those words stabbed deep, but I stood firm. Cassidy just stood silent, head bowed, offering no defense, as if she had already accepted her guilt. She sobbed quietly, refusing to meet my eyes. They were dragged to the patrol car, Dad still shouting, Mom weeping as the doors slammed shut, ending their days of freedom. Sirens wailed, the car sped away into the dusk. Neighbors gathered, pointing and whispering. Mrs. Jenkins stood on her porch. Mr. Smith shook his head. "My God, their own granddaughter?" The quiet street buzzed with shock and murmurs. I stood watching the car disappear, a storm of pain, rage, and cold emptiness crashing inside me now that the full truth was exposed. The people who had once been my family were now criminals. I turned, got in my car, and drove back to the hospital, tears streaming down my face. Aubrey was waiting, and I had to be strong for her. But this pain, it would stay with me forever. The weeks that followed passed in a heavy silence. I stayed with Aubrey day and night, watching her slowly regain strength. But every time she flinched in her sleep or shrank from an unexpected touch, my heart shattered all over again. The police kept me updated, and then the day finally came. The trial was scheduled just 6 weeks after the arrest, unusually fast once the case had been exposed. The county courthouse in central Ohio, an old red brick building, was packed that day. Reporters crowded the entrance, cameras flashing nonstop. Locals gathered in the hallways, whispering. The headline, "Grandparents Lock Granddaughter in Basement," had spread across local papers and then nationwide. The cruelty and the family connection horrified everyone. I held Aubrey's hand as we walked into the courtroom. She wore the new white dress I'd bought her, hair tied neatly, but her hand was still ice cold. "Daddy's right here. You don't have to be afraid anymore," I whispered. She nodded, eyes red but resolute. My daughter had insisted on testifying, even though the therapist advised caution. "I want to tell the whole truth, Daddy, so they can never do it again." Her words filled me with both pride and pain. We took our seats on the plaintiff's side. Across from us sat Lawson and Cassidy in orange prison jumpsuits, hands cuffed, faces gaunt after weeks in jail. Dad had lost a lot of weight, more gray in his hair, eyes still wild. Mom kept her head down, unable to meet my gaze. In the early sessions, Lawson and Cassidy still tried to deny everything, twisting facts, blaming circumstances, even attempting to shift responsibility onto me. Their lawyer, a middle-aged man with thick glasses, kept arguing that it was strict discipline, that the child was badly behaved and needed punishment, that Hank abandoned his daughter for 4 years, which led to the situation. Dad took the stand, voice hoarse. "Hank went to Germany and dumped the kid on us. We're old. We couldn't control her. She was addicted to games, lied all the time, so we had to lock her up to teach her a lesson." I sat there, gripping the armrests, blood pounding in my ears. Mom sobbed. "We only wanted what was best for her, but she wouldn't listen." Those words were salt in an open wound. But then the evidence was presented. Faced with an unbreakable chain of proof, Aubrey's detailed medical records, old and new welts, severe malnutrition, chain scars on her ankle, the photos I took of the basement, the rusted chain, bank statements perfectly matching their luxury shopping receipts, recorded testimonies from neighbors and her teacher. Every lie collapsed. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman, displayed photo after photo. The pitch-black basement, dried blood, moldy breadcrumbs. The courtroom fell dead silent except for breathing. When Mrs. Jenkins' recorded voice played, "I saw Mr. Lawson beat the child until her nose bled." Mom began shaking and Dad stared at the floor. Then came Aubrey. She bravely took the stand. I held her hand under the table as she walked up. Her voice was small but clear, every word carving the air. "Grandpa hit me with his belt, locked me in the basement, only gave me dry bread. Said if I told Daddy he would kill me." My daughter recounted the beatings, the starvation, the basement, the threats. When she said, "I was so scared, I thought I would die down there," the entire room went still. A female reporter bowed her head and cried. Dad finally looked up, eyes red, but said nothing. Mom collapsed onto the table, sobbing uncontrollably. Faced with the evidence and Aubrey's testimony, Lawson and Cassidy had no defense left. Their lawyer fell silent. No more questions. Dad only muttered that he had been wrong. Mom wept without words. Sentencing day, the courtroom was more crowded than ever. The judge, an older woman with a cold but fair voice, read the verdict. Lawson Harper is sentenced to 18 years imprisonment for severe child abuse, unlawful imprisonment and financial exploitation of a minor. Cassidy Harper is sentenced to 12 years imprisonment as an accomplice for enabling and covering up the abuse and exploitation. The gavel fell, echoing through the heavy air like the closing of a gate to hell. I held Aubrey tightly. She trembled in my arms. We didn't cry anymore. We simply felt in silence that a horrific chapter had finally ended. The case made headlines everywhere, dominating front pages, and shocking the nation with the brutality of people who called themselves grandparents. Grandparents turned granddaughter into prisoner. Those headlines haunted the country for weeks. Reporters called for interviews, but I refused them all. I only wanted to take Aubrey home. I held her hand as we walked out of the courthouse. October sunlight poured over us like a boundary between the old hell and a new life beginning. She looked up at me and smiled, the first truly free smile in far too long. "It's over now, right, Daddy?" I nodded, tears falling silently. "It's over, sweetheart. From now on, it's just you and me, and a brand new life." In the days that followed, I went back to my old company for one afternoon to hand in my resignation. Everyone already knew. They hugged me, patted my back, eyes red. My boss could barely speak. "Hank, you're the strongest man I know. Your job will always be here." I thanked them from the bottom of my heart, but still quit. I could no longer split my time. I wanted every remaining minute to make up for what I owed my daughter, day by day, hour by hour. I received a large final payment from the Germany project, early completion bonus and contract compensation, enough for us to start a stable new life. I rented a comfortable, quiet house on the outskirts of Cleveland, hundreds of miles from the old place, with a small garden, an apple tree, and a room painted soft pink just for Aubrey. The day we moved in, she ran through every room laughing, "It's our house, Daddy." I stood watching, tears falling from pure happiness. From then on, my entire world revolved around my daughter. I cooked every meal myself, chicken porridge, sandwiches, chocolate ice cream I bought just for her. I drove her to her new school every morning and waited at the gate every afternoon. I took her to therapy twice a week, held her when nightmares came. I taught her to ride a bike, planted flowers with her in the garden, watched cartoons until late. Life slowly settled. Aubrey's laughter filled the house again, and I felt alive once more. Yet even in this peace, one unresolved knot remained inside me. Dad's words the day he was arrested, "She's no blood of mine," still echoed like a poisonous curse. He had repeated it in rage to Aubrey many times. Was it just the ranting of a cornered madman, or was it a real secret? Mom had stayed silent, neither confirming nor denying. The suspicion that my parents were hiding something even bigger than the crimes already exposed gnawed at me quietly. That doubt grew slowly in the back of my mind, a lingering shadow after the nightmare. Some nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering, who am I really? Is Aubrey truly their granddaughter by blood? And if not, does it change anything? I am still Aubrey's father. I love her more than life, but the shadow lingers, waiting for a day it might flare up. I'm not ready to face it, not yet. Right now, I only want to live for my daughter, for her smile every morning when she wakes. Everything else, let the future answer. The future refused to wait. It arrived on a late autumn afternoon when the maple leaves outside the window blazed red, and Aubrey was sitting in the living room of our new home, drawing. I stood in the kitchen watching her beam at the picture she had just finished. That smile was the most precious thing I owned. Yet inside me, one sentence kept looping like a broken cassette tape. She's no blood of mine. I've hated you since you were little. Lawson's words the day he was handcuffed. I had tried to push them away hundreds of times, but they clung like an unhealed wound, growing more inflamed with every passing day. I knew I couldn't run from it forever. If I didn't face it now, it would eat me alive from the inside, and one day Aubrey would sense her father's unrest. I didn't want her to grow up with a haunted man. So I made the decision. I would visit my parents in prison one last time, hoping to finally get an answer to the doubt that had been tearing me apart. I told Aubrey I had to go away for work for one day. She hugged me tightly. "Come home soon, Daddy. I'll wait for you to have dinner." I kissed her hair, hiding my red eyes. Then I got in the car and drove 3 hours north to the state prison in northern Ohio. Light rain fell. The windshield wipers squeaked like they were crying for me. I had scheduled the visit a week earlier, but even now my feet felt like lead. The visiting room was cold. Metal tables, plastic chairs, thick glass between us. I sat down, fingers laced to stop the shaking. The iron door opened. They were brought in. When Lawson and Cassidy were led into the room, their deterioration was stark. Dad was skeletal, hair snow white, prison uniform hanging off him. Mom looked hollowed out, dark circles under her eyes, hair unkempt. But in my father's eyes, the old bitterness still burned, an undying flame. The moment he saw me, he exploded, slamming the table. "You little bastard. You came here to gloat. Ungrateful brat. You're the one who put your own parents in prison." His voice roared through the small room. Cassidy sat silently, head bowed, shoulders trembling. I took a deep breath and kept my voice steady. I was never ungrateful. From the time I was little until now, I always tried to be a good son. I never complained, never turned my back on family no matter what you did to me. I paused, swallowed hard. But I don't understand. What did I ever do wrong? Why, even when I tried to be the perfect son, was I always treated like an outsider? And Aubrey, she was just an innocent child. How could you unleash that cruelty on her? For a split second, Lawson froze, as if I had struck a nerve. Then he let out a chilling, hollow laugh that made my skin crawl, like a raven in the night. "You want to know why?" he snarled, leaning toward the glass. "Because neither you nor that kid is my blood." I went completely still. My mind went blank, ears ringing as if the floor had dropped out beneath me. I could only hear my own heartbeat thundering. I didn't know if it was the truth or just the final venom of a cornered man. I turned to Cassidy, desperate for a denial, anything to salvage the last shred of belief. But she only looked away, lips pressed tight, neither confirming nor denying. My voice shook. "I need the truth. I can't live the rest of my life in doubt, letting it destroy me. Please, tell me." I looked at Cassidy, softer now. "Mom, Aubrey used to adore you. She clung to you, trusted you like a real grandmother. And in the end, you abandoned her. Let her suffer horrors no child should ever know. Didn't that hurt you at all?" At those words, Cassidy suddenly broke into wrenching sobs, the first time she had ever let her mask fall in front of me. She covered her face, shoulders heaving, cries echoing in the cold room. Lawson glared at her, but she didn't stop. After a long while, she calmed, wiped her eyes, turned to Lawson and said with sudden resolve, "Tell him. You have to tell the truth. It's time." Lawson's face flickered with panic, eyes darting, weak protests rising, but Cassidy stared at him, pain and determination in her gaze. Finally, he slumped forward, let out a long, defeated breath, and began. His voice was hoarse. "You're not my son. When you were 2, your mother and I were just hired help for a wealthy family in Pennsylvania. The Montclairs. Powerful people, money pouring out their ears. But then the family tore itself apart. Brothers fighting over inheritance, hired killers, bodies dropping left and right. Your real parents were terrified their son would be murdered to cut him out of the will. They handed you to us with a suitcase full of cash and told us to take you far away, change your name, never come back. They said it was the only way to keep you alive." I sat frozen, every word hammered into my understanding of my entire life. All my childhood memories, the old house, fishing by the river, Mom's lullabies, were nothing but a cover. I wasn't Hank Harper. I wasn't their son. I was a child hidden away. Lawson sneered, eyes cold as knives. "I kept you only because of that suitcase. Raising you was just a transaction. But the older you got, the more you looked and acted like your real parents. Stubborn, arrogant, always thinking you were better than everyone. It made my skin crawl. I hated the sight of you. Every dollar you sent home. In my mind, it was just you paying back the debt for me raising you." He narrowed his eyes, voice dripping poison. "And that kid, Aubrey. She's yours, but Montclair blood still runs in her veins. Every time I looked at her, I remembered that family. I hated her so much I wanted to destroy everything connected to it." I barely heard what Cassidy said next. Blood drained from my face, my hands turned ice cold. I stood to leave, stumbling like a ghost when her hoarse voice came through the glass behind me. "Hank, wait! Do you want to know who you really are?" I stopped and turned. Cassidy pressed herself to the glass, eyes red. "I don't even know if that family still exists. They say it fell apart after the inheritance war. But if you ever want to find out who you really are, this is the only clue left." She asked the guard for permission to hand over a slip of paper. A few minutes later, as I waited in the outside area, an officer approached and gave me the inspected note. My hands shook as I opened it. On it was a name I had never heard, Thomas Montclair, and an old address in Pennsylvania written in fading ink. I clutched the crumpled paper and walked out of the prison holding a truth powerful enough to collapse my entire past. The rain still fell. Cold wind whipped my face, but I felt nothing. Hank Harper had died inside that glass room. All that remained was a man holding a scrap of paper and a stranger's name, Thomas Montclair. I sat in the car staring at the note until my eyes blurred. I didn't cry. I only felt empty. Then I started the engine and drove home. Aubrey was waiting for dinner. No matter who I am, no matter what the past holds, Aubrey is still my daughter and I am still her father. That is the one certainty left in my life. But I know the journey to find myself has only just begun. The days that followed, I lived like a shadow. I still woke early to make Aubrey breakfast, still drove her to school, still smiled when she told me about her friends. But inside my head, the name Thomas Montclair burned red hot. Every night after she fell asleep, I searched the internet. The Montclair family appeared in a few old articles. A financial and real estate empire in Pennsylvania, once among the wealthiest in the Northeast, then torn apart by a bloody inheritance war in the late 1980s. Nothing remained. No addresses, no public heirs, only rumors of a missing son. I shut the laptop and lay staring at the ceiling until dawn, heart pounding as if it would burst. After many sleepless nights torn between doubt and the desperate need to know the truth, I realized I could no longer live under a false name. I had to go to the source no matter what I found. I didn't tell Aubrey the whole truth. I simply said we were going on a short trip to somewhere special. She bounced with excitement. To the beach, Daddy? Or an amusement park? I forced a smile and ruffled her hair. Even more special than that. Early one morning, I loaded the suitcase, lifted Aubrey into the passenger seat, and buckled her in carefully. We slipped away while the city was still wrapped in dawn mist, heading for the address on Cassidy's scrap of paper, a place in Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles from Ohio, remote and forgotten. The drive was nearly 400 miles. I played children's songs. Aubrey sang along while I stayed silent, eyes fixed on the highway, mind in turmoil. Light rain fell, stopped, fell again. Aubrey dozed off, head against the window, still humming in her sleep. I looked at her and tears fell silently. No matter who I was, she was my everything. After hours of driving through exhaustion and tension, we stopped in front of an ancient, towering iron gate flanked by stone walls and dense pine forest. A weathered, moss-covered sign read, "Montclair Estate, private property." My heart hammered. I pressed the intercom. A deep male voice answered, "Who's at the gate?" I held the scrap of paper up to the camera, voice shaking. My name is Hank Harper, but I think I might be Thomas Montclair. I need to speak to the owner." Silence. I thought they would turn us away. Then the gates slowly creaked open and the voice said curtly, "Come in." I drove up a long, tree-lined avenue. Ancient pines towered on both sides. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in shimmering patches. The road wound forever until a massive, centuries-old mansion appeared. Gray stone walls, red-tiled roof, pure 19th century European grandeur. I parked, heart nearly leaping from my chest. Aubrey woke up, rubbing her eyes. "Wow, Daddy, it's like a fairy tale castle." As we stepped out, two elegantly dressed people were already waiting at the grand entrance. The woman, in her 60s, silver hair in an elegant bun, deep green silk dress, striking blue eyes. The man, tall, white-haired, black suit, commanding presence. They stood silently watching us. Then the woman looked at me, froze for a moment, and suddenly ran forward, throwing her arms around me as if I might vanish. "Thomas, my son, Thomas," she sobbed, calling me by the exact name on the paper. In that instant, I understood this was my real name. She trembled, hands cupping my face. "I'm Vivian. I'm your mother. Oh God, my boy." I stood frozen in the embrace of this stranger who somehow felt achingly familiar, her faint perfume the warmth of a mother I had never known. Vivian released me and turned to Aubrey, who was hiding behind my leg. "And this beautiful little girl?" she asked, voice breaking. I nodded. "Your granddaughter, Aubrey." Vivian's emotions overflowed. She swept Aubrey into her arms, tears streaming. "My granddaughter. Oh heavens, she looks just like my son." She carried Aubrey inside, brushing past the man who still stood silently behind her. That was Charles Montclair. He merely nodded at me, eyes deep and serious, no smile, as if quietly measuring everything before him. He studied me for a long moment, then inclined his head toward the door. No questions, no embrace, no visible emotion. Inside, the mansion was vast. Soaring ceilings, old masters on the walls, a fireplace crackling softly. I sat on a leather sofa. Aubrey pressed close to me. Vivian sat opposite, unable to take her eyes off her son. Charles stood by the fireplace, arms folded. I told them everything. My childhood with Lawson and Cassidy, Emily's death, raising Aubrey alone, the decision to work in Germany. The horrific discovery when I returned, the basement, the trial. I held nothing back. Vivian wept the entire time, hand over her mouth, tears falling. When I described Aubrey chained in the basement, she collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing silently. When I finished, Vivian broke completely. "My son, I never imagined you suffered so much. I searched for you for 36 years. She threw her arms around me again, crying like rain. Charles remained cool, only saying, "I provisionally believe what you've told us, but we need definitive proof." He summoned a servant to take hair samples from Aubrey and me and sent them immediately to the family's private lab. The next day, the DNA results arrived. Vivian opened the envelope with shaking hands in front of Charles and me. Black and white, unmistakable, 99.9% match. Hank Harper was Thomas Montclair, the biological son of Charles and Vivian Montclair. Aubrey was their true granddaughter. In that moment, every emotion inside me exploded. I fell to my knees, face in my hands, sobbing for finally finding my roots, sobbing for 38 years lost. Vivian held me. Charles placed a hand on my shoulder, eyes red. He didn't cry, but his voice trembled. "My son, welcome home." By the fireplace, Charles slowly told the story, voice low, pulling me back to a distant time of blood and darkness. "When you were 2, the family was engulfed in a brutal fight over the inheritance. My brother secretly hired assassins. Your mother's younger brother was gunned down in the street as a warning. Their next target was you, the sole legitimate heir. We had no choice. To save your life, we sent you far away with a couple we believed we could trust, along with money and a promise they would protect you forever." He paused, the firelight flickering across his heavy face. "After we regained control, we searched for you for years. Private investigators everywhere, rewards posted, chasing every tiny lead. But every trail went cold. In the end, we believed we had lost you forever. The 3 of us sat there, weeping and rejoicing, reunited after more than 3 decades apart." Vivian would not let go of Aubrey, calling her my precious granddaughter. Aubrey, shy at first, soon grinned from ear to ear as Vivian gave her candy and told fairy tales. Charles walked me through the house, showing portraits of me as a toddler, looking exactly like Aubrey does now. I stood before one painting, tears falling again. I held Aubrey tight in the grand hall and whispered, "Daddy found your real grandparents. We're not alone anymore." She looked up, eyes shining. "So are you a prince now, Daddy?" I laughed through my tears. "I'm just your daddy. That's all that matters." From that moment, our lives truly turned a new page. I was no longer Hank Harper. I was Thomas Montclair, the long-lost son of the Montclair family, missing for 36 years. But to Aubrey, I would forever simply be Dad, and that is the most precious title I will ever have. The first days at the Montclair estate felt like living inside a dream. The mansion was immense. Endless corridors, ancient oil paintings, fireplaces that burned day and night. Every morning I woke with the strange sensation that I had wandered into the wrong life until Aubrey's laughter rang down the hallway. "Daddy," Grandma made heart-shaped pancakes for me. I ran out and saw Vivian, my birth mother, a woman whose name I had known for only days, cradling Aubrey on her lap, feeding her bites of pancake drenched in syrup. Charles sat nearby reading the paper, but the corners of his eyes betrayed a rare, quiet joy. They spoiled Aubrey with every meal, every nap, every smile, treating each one like a treasure. Vivian sewed new dresses for her. Charles silently filled an entire room with toys and books. They were making up for more than 10 years without a granddaughter, with every ounce of love 2 elderly people still possessed. Many times I stood silently in the kitchen doorway watching them play, Charles pushing Aubrey on the swing, Vivian teaching her little songs, and quietly realizing this was what real family felt like. No coldness, no conditions, no need to prove anything, utterly different from the frozen years Aubrey and I had endured under Lawson and Cassidy's roof. My eyes stung, but this time from happiness. One solemn evening, the formal ceremony recognizing me as a Montclair was held in the Grand Hall. Hundreds attended. Distant relatives, business partners, powerful faces I had only ever seen in newspapers. Crystal chandeliers blazed, a string quartet played Ave Maria. The atmosphere was as solemn as a state occasion. I wore the black suit Vivian had chosen for me, standing beside Charles, palms sweating. Aubrey wore a white dress and held my hand, eyes wide at the crowd. I stood before hundreds of surprised, probing, and sometimes openly disdainful gazes. People who had never accepted the existence of a bastard child suddenly returning. I took a deep breath. Then Charles placed a hand on my shoulder and spoke clearly into the microphone. "Thomas Montclair, my only son with Vivian, has returned after 36 years lost. From this day forward, he is officially the lawful heir of the Montclair family." The hall fell silent for a moment, then applause broke out, some sincere, some polite, some skeptical. I bowed in thanks, feeling a weight lift from my chest. Aubrey hugged my leg and whispered, "Are you really a prince now, Daddy?" I laughed and kissed her hair. "I'm still just your daddy." After the ceremony, I was given an entry-level executive role, vice president in charge of infrastructure development. Charles was blunt. "This is my test. Prove the Montclair blood runs in you, son." I nodded. I wasn't afraid. With my years of bridge building in Germany, with the grit I had earned in the cutthroat world of construction and survival, I threw myself into the work like a fish returning to water. The projects I led, mountain suspension bridges, smart urban districts, consistently exceeded expectations. Profit rose 38% in the first year alone. From being whispered about as that country bumpkin who appeared out of nowhere, I became the man whose every decision was listened to and respected. In board meetings, the very people who once sneered now nodded approvingly at my presentations. Aubrey lived like a real little princess. She attended the finest international school, had weekly sessions with a private therapist, learned piano, horseback riding, and painting. The basement nightmares grew rarer. Her smile grew brighter every day. 2 years flew by in the blink of an eye. Charles, now frail, hair snow-white, began suffering from joint pain and heart issues. One autumn afternoon, he called me into his study, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said, "I'm old enough to rest now. From this day, Montclair is yours." He signed the documents transferring full control of the corporation to me in front of the entire board. No one objected. Under my leadership, the Montclair Group entered its strongest era of growth, stability, and prosperity ever. We expanded into Europe, signed the contract for the largest bridge in North America, and doubled the stock value. Yet I remained the father who drove Aubrey to school every morning, cooked dinner every night, and read her bedtime stories, even if I now wore suits and signed million-dollar deals by day. One peaceful afternoon, I stood on the second-floor balcony looking down at the vast garden. Aubrey was playing with her grandparents, Charles pushing her on the swing, Vivian laughing until tears came as Aubrey told school stories. Golden autumn sunlight fell gently on faces that had endured so much loss. Grandparents who lost a son for 36 years, a father and daughter who lost childhood to hell. Now finally we had all found each other. Looking back on the journey from darkness to light, I realized that blood does not solely determine family. Hearts and choices do. Lawson and Cassidy shared my blood yet chose cruelty. Vivian and Charles didn't know I existed for 36 years yet chose unconditional love from the very first second. I learned that blind trust can destroy a lifetime. Only by finding the courage to face the truth, no matter how excruciating, can we save our own future. From my own tragedy, I drew one lesson. No one has the right to trample another's life in the name of family. True family is not a place where people slowly wound one another. It is a shelter that protects, defends, and keeps each other alive through life's storms. And I believe that only when we dare to stand on the side of justice, even if it costs blood, tears, and unbearable pain, does light truly exist. I walked down to the garden. Aubrey ran into my arms. I lifted her high, spun her around, and her laughter rang through the trees. Vivian and Charles watched us, smiling with warm eyes. I pulled all three of them, my true grandparents and my daughter, into one embrace. Life had taken so much from me, but in the end, it gave me back far more. I am Thomas Montclair, yet above all and forever I am Aubrey's dad.